Morning.
Councillor.
Morning, Councillor.
You are. Oh, tell you, that looks a bit better than here.
Yeah.
A live stream at the moment. So. All right, councillors, we're going to
Ready to go? Ready to start. Good morning, everybody, on this lovely, fresh Tuesday, 19th of July council meeting. Thank you all for being here. Everybody in attendance. Live streaming statement. Every River Council wishes to advise members of the public that council's meetings will be recorded and will be available after each meeting on council's website. All care will be taken to maintain the privacy of those in attendance. However, as a visitor in the public gallery, your presence may be recorded. When remaining in the public gallery, it is assumed your consent is given in the event your image is broadcast. This includes any filming by television cameras if attendance is approved by the venue. Acknowledgement of country. I would like to acknowledge that we are here today on the land of the Wamba Perra people. I would also like to acknowledge and pay my respects to past Aboriginal elders, the present Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people who reside within this area and their future generations. Statement of purpose. I have come here as a councillor freely and without bias to represent the views of the community in considering the matters before us today, to vote in a manner I consider to be in the best interest of the community, and to observe the code of conduct and respect the rule of chair and views of my fellow councillors. Apologies and applications for leave of absence. We have one from Councillor Taria Moore. Somebody would like to move this application for a leave of absence. Happy to do that. Thank you, Councillor Fletcher. Seconded by Councillor Fellows. Item 7, confirmation of minutes. Draft minutes, ordinary meeting of the 28th of June 2022. Would somebody like to move those minutes?
Through you, Madam Mayor, could we please make an amendment to page 8, I think it is, page 8, 1, is it? Councillor Peter Connell is included in being present at that meeting. If we could just adjust that, please.
Yeah.
be correct on the website. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Burge. Would you like to move those minutes are correct otherwise, Councillor?
Yes.
Yep, thank you. Seconder. Thank you, Councillor. All those in favour? Carried. Do we have any disclosures of interests today? No. Minute, item 10, reports of committees, section 355, Blighty and
Mayor. Here's the minutes of these two committees, just to get the council working.
Thank you. Recommendations there. Any questions? Somebody like?
Is it up to the members of the Canadian Board to arrange the meeting with the minister to arrange for them to get back?
The Mayor has sent a letter to the Deputy Premier asking him to look into it, and then it should follow from that.
Just ask a question. Why should it be left up to the members of the committee to be seeking a meeting with the minister? Surely that should be something that council initiates.
That's what we're trying to do. That was the purpose of the letter going out to the Deputy Premier and to ask to be seeking the. I did discuss it with the Deputy Premier when he was here in town a couple of weeks ago and said that we'd be raising it with him and that we wanted it looked into. And so we just now formally put that into formal writing to him to ask him to raise it. So no, it's not, we're not asking the committee at all. We're on the front foot trying to get that organised.
Again, from you, Mayor, committee members are pretty out of it themselves. They've got some contacts with the Westpac team, and they've also got contact with the executive of the state. They're so make sure that when we meet,
They're part of it.
they're very much part of the process as well.
Yeah, and we're working closely with Colin and that to make sure that we're all on the same page and nobody's stepping over anyone's toes. We're all working together. Any other questions? Would somebody like to move those minutes? Thank you, Councillor Peterson. Somebody like to second minutes? Thank you, Councillor Fellows. All those in favour? Carried. Reports to Council 11.1, Mayor, Councillor, General Manager meeting attendance.
Just making an amendment for the 9th of June, Lakenella Committee Strategic Plan and Budget Roadshow. I was not in attendance.
Madam Mayor, if I may, same with myself. I unfortunately couldn't make the road shows due to COVID. Sorry, Belinda.
That's right. So which road show? 9th of June to Blighty? Yeah. Beautiful. All right. Outside of that, are we all good?
I can't remember where I
Would you like to those reports? Thank you, Councillor Cutton. Do we have somebody that would like to second the report? Thank you, Councillor Peterson. All those in favour? Aye. Carried. Thank you. 11.2, resolutions of council.
The monthly report regarding the status of resolutions of council as at the 7th of July, total outstanding resolutions for the 2021 financial year is 4, and resolutions of the council for the 21-22 financial year is 21.
Few questions, Councillor Birch.
Through you, Madam Mayor. The page 38, 2022 2806 11.1, the car park, the DA, the car park. We were supposed to be there was supposed to be further brought to this meeting. Is that? I noticed it's not on the agenda.
Just clear that off, I'll be the conflict of interest in this.
Thank you, Councillor Bird. So yeah, the had discussions with the applicant and waiting further information from them. So the matters in their hands to the feedback from previous meetings that's been given to them. So we'll address those.
Thank you. And for page 44, 2022, 022, the growth management strategy. Just curious as to that seems to be going on and being extended. Just had a query regarding that, where we were.
Through you. As councillors will know, we've had some staffing changes in that team. There is a brief that's being worked on. We were hoping it would be developed by June, but now being informed that it will be finalised for councillors to have a look at in August, and we're hopeful of in August providing a report to council to set a growth management committee that councillors can get involved in.
Sorry, I had one more if I could just finish that. On page 45, where is it there? 2022 022, I think it's 15.2, Edward River Village quotes. And that's underway, I believe. I didn't realise there hadn't been any further meetings of the Edward River Village. I just wasn't sure where we were up to there either. Sorry, there was nothing on today as well about it.
So we decided not to have a meeting of the Edward River Village until we got the new tender quotes in, and then we would pick it up from there, because there was nothing else we could do at that point until we had that in.
Through you, Madam Mayor, with all due respect, I think I read in the ARIC, the agenda for the meeting this Friday, that there are some quotes in, are there?
Thanks, through you, Madam Mayor. So the quotes for the dwellings, the tender process for the dwellings has completed. We've received a number of submissions. Staff have been commencing the evaluations of it, so they've been doing them over the last couple of weeks. We've not been away, unfortunately, so that's sort of caused a little bit of a hold up just in those evaluations. So currently we're looking at completing the evaluations this week, and it'll come through council's sort of process in terms of ARIC having a look at that. So when we talk to ARIC about it, globally about the prices, ARIC's not part of the evaluation process, so tenders, but we do have that pricing, so they'll be part of information that we provided through that process, through ARIC, the committee, and then on to council.
Thank you, Mark. I just would have thought it might have come through council before it went to sorry, please help me. I don't understand the procedure.
It's more around not so much the senior living or ARIC procedures, where I say it's more around the tender procedures. So ultimately, we've run a tender, we've received submissions for it, they'll be evaluated by staff, and then an evaluation report with the recommendation will come up to council in a closed session, and then council will resolve and around that and go ahead or not go ahead. So that's a sort of normal tender process. What we're doing as part of that, because we do want ARIC oversight of it, is that we will get that pricing and provide that into reports for ARIC. It's not the
tender reports because that's a very set process. But we do have that information and use that to people sort of running the both processes. But in terms of the tender prices, the specifics around that part, they will come up to council. No other groups will see that before it goes to council. That's just part of the normal process. So yeah, it's really something we've talked about, but that's the process we go through.
Right, thank you very much.
Through you, Madam Mayor. Mr. Dale, so it's normal for the tender to go to Eric and then to go back to council.
Thanks, Deputy Mayor. It's not. And Eric, the information provided by Eric hasn't been that they want to be part of the tender process. It's around the audit and risk side of the Everywhere Village project as a whole. So that's what Eric is interested in. The amounts of the tender account sits with the risk. So that's why that information. We wouldn't run tenders through Eric, but we can get pricing information that we've got through the tender process, and that's what Eric's interested in as the project.
Madam Mayor, through you, if I can just probably to those who are viewing this meeting, but also to the councillors, that the Edward Village consists of essentially three parts of the contract. One is for the establishment of a contract, the buildings, that is the dwellings that will be there. One is the contract to undertake the civil works, and one is in what Councillor Burgess raised in the resolutions of council, and that is a delegation to the general manager to receive quotes for NBN and electricity supply. So currently, the current status of that is council has resolved to enter into a contract, which has been done for the creation of the civil works. Council has also delegated to me the opportunity to receive quotes and enter into an engagement for the NBN and the electricity supply. And the final stage of that process is for council to consider the tenders for the buildings, for the dwellings. Now, given that the council previously saw the decision around building the dwellings, it was deferred to the ARIC committee. I felt it appropriate that before the council looks at the contract for the dwellings, which will be coming to, and I'm going to propose in other business after the council meeting, it comes into an extraordinary council meeting, that it was put in front of ARIC in a general term to show the difference between what was seen in the previous ARIC committee to this one, so that the ARIC can form their views as to, and to be able to provide advice to the council as to whether it was reasonably appropriate to continue on. I suppose at this stage we've had January, it was considered by council, and we are about to engage a contractor to undertake the civil works in early August. That's actually been done and they're being set up. So it's very important that the council understand that they need to make a decision on the dwellings as soon as possible, so and any opportunities for delay. If there is a propensity for the councillors to not support the dwelling contract, then I need to be able to take steps to halt any works on the civil. So that's essentially the approach we've taken, is to put a general report to the ARIC committee, and that's available for any councillor to view. The report that will come, the reports that will come to the council meeting will be in the full analysis of the tender response, and also a recommendation around whether or not to proceed with the full project.
Thank you, through you, Mayor. I'm still getting a problem with the process, in that I would have thought that council would have seen that, then it would have gone to ARIC. So I just do feel a little concerned because that could actually result eventually in councillors becoming defunct if we just go straight from operations to Eric. That I would just like to make that point that I find it quite unusual. That perhaps we should have had a meeting of the village committee, then the council, then Eric for confirmation. And I'm new at this, so I'm asking for assistance, but it just doesn't seem correct. So
We've got some advice behind you.
thank you.
Good morning, councillors. Two things, the observation that Councillor Burge is making on the role of Eric is written so far as it's more an assurance and review body, rather than seek permission sort of thing. However, council did resolve earlier in the year to refer the matter to Eric. Eric looked at it and said it raised some issues, which are in the minutes, and then they asked for information to come back so they could give council a definitive sort of recommendation. So in this particular example, it is a little bit horse cart scenario, but it is tied back to the April minutes from the Eric. So from a governance point of view, as the Director of Infrastructure has pointed out, the tender assessment is a completely different beast to what we're doing with Eric. All we're doing to Eric is saying to them, we have got through the tender process some more indicative information that we can relate to you without breaking the tender process or anything like that, so that the Eric can give better advice. But that advice is not what council does. Council is the determinative body. You people assess the tender based on the report from the council officers. You make the determination, not Eric. It's not a role, and I am very aware of what Councillor Burge, because this is the whole view of Eric in terms of the whole sector, is that Eric is not its role is to review and improve governance, but not to be a determinative body. So in terms of the process, it's really carrying on from the Eric meeting in April, and the timing of it was, depending on one's point of view, it gives them an opportunity to better inform the councillors, but it doesn't take away your statutory procedures in terms of determining the tender and having access to that full information. So that is why it's happened this way, because it is carrying on from that April resolution, both council as well as the Eric on April. So in terms of the timing of the meeting, and as general managers alluded to, and I supporting one, is that the quicker we can make a determination as the council for the community is great. Yeah. And so my advice to the general manager was not to delay any further and wait to the next Eric meeting, because Eric, whilst you are answerable to them, to establish and maintain a level of cooperation between the committee and council is obviously the better outcome. And I just think if we said to Eric, we can't tell you that yet, that would have pushed it out to the next meeting. And the Eric meetings are generally timed in corresponding to the audit agenda. So our next meeting would have been determined by the audit committees, by the audit process, which means it might come back to council. So it's kind of a horse and cart sort of thing. Doesn't give you the comfort to know that the Eric has had a look at it. Maybe that was my interpretation. Does it mean that you have been left out of the loop? I hope not. That's definitely not the intention of the two processes.
Thanks, Greg. I think Alice.
I can just add some clarification. A good example is, through you, Madam Mayor, is the financial statements. What normally happens is they're referred to Eric and to come back and to advise council that to recommend that it's okay. It's a sort of similar type process, but the tender unfortunately has come at the same time as reviewing everything else. So that's a little bit out of kilter. But the role of council is you're the decision-making body, not Eric.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, through you. I do totally comprehend all that, and I would just like to put it forward that my view of the ARIC committee is I want to be guided by them because they are very learned people. They're in that position because of that. However, I feel we run the risk of cart before the horse. They come back with a comment and we are led by that comment. So I would prefer to stick to procedural, that if we see those things first, then we say, yes, ARIC needs to go to that. That is just my view.
Thank you, but at this point in time, we don't have a mover and a seconder. We simply question, so if we can argue it later on, but have we got any other questions about the resolutions of council? Councillor Peterson.
On page 38, 280611.6, that's due to the end of this month. How are we tracking with that integrated planning and reporting community consultation outcomes?
Through you, Madam Mayor. Yes, that was all agreed by council last month.
Yeah, no, just check because the date's still due.
Yes, so we can close that one off.
Closed off.
And page 39, 2022, 063811.8. Again, that's the support for broken health commission. I think we discussed that in the last meeting. That's closed off. Time page, which is 40, 2022, 0.5, 0517, 0.4. The iPart, now was that finished last month? We agree with that one?
Yes.
The page 48, 2021, the airport runway reconstruction. I know we discussed that in the last one, in the last meeting, which was in June. Is that finished? Are we still ongoing with that? We're ongoing to the date.
So as a project, it's still ongoing. We've actually got a tenders out at the moment for that reconstruction. There's a tender meeting to that. Which is good.
I think the following one on the next page was the sky park, and that related to that as well, isn't it? So, ongoing? Yeah. Then page 49, 2020, 236, the Conroy Street finalisation. Is that finalised?
No, it's not finalised yet. We've just been still working with surveyors. We've got sort of surveyors on board now with that because we need to provide the new plan and that, so that will be ongoing. Right.
Thanks, councillor.
Sure that those plans obviously started reading out, and allocated some funding at the last council meeting to develop the map of the ownership and occupancy of the council. I'd just like an update as to where we're going, because to me that is a sort of cornerstone to getting this growth plan right without that sort of behind.
Yeah, so following that information, the staff have started doing that, and so collaboration between our rate staff and our GIS staff, so they can get that information through the rate staff base. I'd be hoping that within the briefing then in August we'll be able to start providing that information. We've just gone through with the MCU staff and the putting together the CSV operational plan, so those staff involved have been heavily involved in that. So it's gone through that process to back onto that project.
Really, thank you for that. We've never made it up, and it will be an enormous asset for the community.
Thank you. No more questions, councillors? Do we have somebody that wants to move the?
One more, sorry. It's a two-part one. On page 43, 44, 2022, 0315, 12.6, with the 35 committees. Now, I know we had an email from Sarah Cook for the Wanganella Hall Committee, just asking if everyone there had been notified. I've also sent an email for that committee for Wanganella, asking if we can organise a get together. I've only heard back from Susie Wallace. I haven't heard from anyone else. I just want to know if you've heard anything regarding that. No. And in that, I think that's
It's actually been closed.
Yes, seems to be a few errors in
Yeah.
updating here, so thanks for pointing that out.
Yeah.
Councillor Pearson.
Otherwise, you can miss that one.
Wonderful, thank you. We have a mover, councillor Peterson, so we have a seconder for the, thank you, councillor Foggy. All those in favour?
And just a comment in that matter, just as councillor Peterson said, if those comments can be updated, it would save a lot of this toing and froing, because many of them are way out of date.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All those in favour? Carried, thank you. 11.3 investments and reserves report, thanks Alistair.
Yes, through you, Madam Mayor. Investments report for June 2022 is tabled for council. Total investments at the end of the month, 47.3 million, which was a decrease of 1.8 from May figure of 49.1. This is mainly due to the end of year spend in operating and capital. Plus, we did receive a grant from the infrastructure and transport department, so 2 grants there. 62% of council investments are held with 2 banking institutions now, but 38% in Combank, 24%. 90% of our portfolio is with term deposits, and 10% is on cash and common. All of our funds are invested in A2 or above institutions, so low credit risk organisations. We earned $37,400 in a month, and our year-to-date interest was $295,000. And the returns are ahead of the Bloomberg Ausback Index, which is now creeping up a bit, but we're still performing pretty well against the market. Our investments range between $44 and $49 million, and seasonal fluctuations depend. They usually run down towards the end of the financial year. The outlook is promising, with rates increasing as we all see, and we could end up with with rates climbing to 3%. We're now investing into two-year terms, 12 months into 2 years, and they're returning quite well at the moment. But we're waiting till our deposits mature before we reinvest. The really good news is, it's on the screen now, is all of our investments, 18,200,000 is unrestricted funds. That's what's freely available. And we have 7.8 million of internally restricted, which is all, it's basically set aside by council. Our external restrictions are funds we can't touch. So council, from a council's point of view, is we're quite healthy in having unrestricted cash there in a bank account, and that's pretty positive. So the investment report's able for council.
Was there questions, anybody? Questions, councillor Birch?
Through you, Madam Mayor, page 64. There is a red cross next to the Judo Bank investment, and the comment, if you could explain that to me, do we need to be cautious? Do we need to be careful? It virtually says Council had a minor overweight position to Judo Bank, la la la. Would someone like to explain that and the feeling on that, please? Page 64 of the report. We've got a red cross in one corner with which highlighted it, and the above comment, the counterparty.
Oh, it's yes, through Madam Mayor, it's just outside the counterparty limits, and it's just something to monitor. It should be self-correcting in July. In other words, we bring that back within the credit limit, the counterparty limit of $250,000.
And so going into the future, that looks.
Yes, that looks, yes, it's just outside the limits at the moment, but it's something that just advised to monitor, and the advisors on that anyway. So we'll follow up with them. Thank you for that.
Whereas about any other questions?
Just, what sort of breakdown are we looking at? The funds decreased by 1.764 million during the month.
Yeah.
What was the actual breakdown within that? So-
Well, what normally happens with council expenditure through you, Madam Mayor, is in the month of June, there's an increase in expenditure to get projects finished and to get year-end expenditure in. And it's usually every single council experiences it with a large spend in proportion to previous months of the year. That's all it is, and we were expecting that.
Okay, but that money went to which areas?
They went all over council. It's all areas.
Okay.
There's no specific one specific areas. It's a general trend is to get money out the door, but in the month of June.
Any other questions? Thank you. Next report also. Would somebody like to move, as a requesting somebody like to move the report? Thanks, Councillor Clapham. Do we have a seconder for the report? Thanks, Councillor Fellows. Any questions, concerns? All those in favour? Carried. 11.4 debt recovery and hardship policy.
Madam Mayor, this policy is one that was adopted by council in October 2018, and the objective is to provide relief to ratepayers who experience exceptional, genuine financial difficulties in paying the rates and charges. The COVID pandemic resulted in having two provisions, income provisions, which have been subsequently removed, to allow those suffering hardship from COVID to be allowed access to the policy. And they expired in December 2020. And then further interim revision was to accommodate rates harmonisation was done in June 2021. And this is a temporary measure to be removed after June 2022. Now, this is an update in the policy to remove that provision. The one thing I would stress to councillors is that we spend a lot of time with ratepayers. If they can't pay us, if they come to us, we'll come up with a payment plan that suits the needs. That is outside the policy of hardship, but it's a common sense approach to help them to manage their cash flows. And as long as they meet their requirements as agreed with us, then everything's fine. So we encourage ratepayers who are experiencing difficulty to contact council. And that's one of the things that in the finance team are very keen for to happen.
Thank you. Questions?
What percentage is the rule of thumb you expect on bad debts, and how much of this do you find when you have to have a provision in there?
People are, it's because of rates of tax, we're preferential treatment. We have lots of rights and opportunities to actually sell people's property, can garnish the wages. But in general, real debt that's long term is very small amount. We have less than 5 to 10% of the rates that would go unpaid at any particular time. And we do provide, make some provision for this. But we've got debt collection procedures that we put in place, and we only follow through and take people to court when they're in default of the position and don't keep in contact with us. But we don't have many.
It's just more of interest.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions, Councillor Peterson?
Under the policy objectives, with the policy objective document 2, we've discussed that there's a payment plan for those looking at objective to determine and assist those ratepayers who are experiencing general financial hardship. Now, if we worked out sort of payment plan that would be on, as opposed to forfeiture or waiving any fees if they're unable to pay those. I think it's discussed further down to sort of
streamline the questions I've got.
Well, what we encourage ratepayers to do is to come up with a payment plan and to pay us a direct debit X what is an affordable amount and an agreed amount. And we're not talking like $4 a week, right? We're talking about something that's a little bit more than that, that they can manage within the budget. We'd encourage ratepayers who are struggling to talk to financial advisors and for that to come with them to us and say, like, this is what we can do. And we will go out of our way to make it easy for them, knowing that they do owe us money, as opposed to us being the last person that should be getting paid. If that makes sense.
So if they are overdue on their rates,
What's the time frame you have them to repay that?
Well, what we do is we chase them up for payment, and it's only when they get to, let's say, 90 days that we actually put a lot of pressure on them. And we go through a debt collection agency to send out letters. So we send out letters of reminder, but then we really put the pressure on after 90 days because that's a long time to not pay.
okay, so we have, if they're overdue, we've got 90 days for them to start.
That's a procedure that we have as opposed to policy. So, you know, because we're flexible in how we approach it. We don't want to go, like, wait for the clock to go over to day 91 and hit people up. But I will stress, and I keep stressing, if people have problems, is to contact council and let us know, because we can help if we know about it. That's our approach.
I ask, because I know further on we've got discussions about financial hardship, and then there's interim payment plans, transfer of land, sales of property.
And then page 84, general motor lease would be not cost effective. The general motor lease is not cost effective to attempt to recover the amount outstanding. What portion or percentage is acceptable to recover or not recover in regards to from like the rates that are not done?
Well, we try and chase up everything, but you know, we usually find that there's usually a few $100s that people owe us, but as opposed to $2 or $3. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. And that just gets added on to the cumulative there. So it's each ratepayer, they don't clear the account, it will still be outstanding and keep growing. But as I say, we're coming back to encourage you to come and talk to us.
But if that amount is ongoing, there's interest attached to that.
Yes, we charge them interest. As soon as it hits their outstanding interest gets accrued to their account. Because what happens is if you as a ratepayer are paying on time and somebody isn't, then in effect that you're paying for that. Yeah. So the ratepayers aren't paying are being unfair on other ratepayers.
Any other questions? No? Any other questions, Councillor Clark?
A question, thank you very much, Alistair. Absolutely supporting it. At some stage, actually, wouldn't mind just saying an age debtors report to the table of council. I'd just be interested to see.
Yeah, we can do that.
Yeah, thank you.
No other questions? Would somebody like to move the report, the hardship policy? Thank you, Councillor Peterson. Do we have a seconder for that? Thank you, Councillor Hutton. No other concerns? All those in favour? Carried. 11.5, council obligations under the Code of Conduct. Alistair.
Through you, Madam Mayor. Before handing over to Council's Governance Officer to comment in more detail, Council's recently updated its Code of Conduct policy, and with our pecuniary interests and related party returns now due, this report is aiming to reinforce key points about demonstrating Council's commitment to integrity in the office by completing annual returns and considering the issues of capturing and securing public records, particularly in relation to communications. And as I stated, with the returns about to be due and being a new council, we thought that we'd level this for discussion and hand over now to Council's Governance Officer to add a bit more.
Thank you, through you, Madam Mayor. Yes, the report is as read. We do each councillor and senior management of staff have an annual interest forms. As we discussed in the previous meeting, we put the related party transactions in the same code of conduct document because they're very similar in intent, but one is driven by an accounting standard and the other one is driven by local government act. So I put them both together in the code of conduct. So for both councillors and for the general public, they can see those two areas of declaration. You might recall at the last meeting, or I'm not sure it was a briefing, where we discussed the related party transaction, but Councillor Burge did make a very valid point on that, that there is a provision in that accounting standard about materiality. So in your pecuniary interest under the Local Government Act, it doesn't matter whether you think it's small, great or indifferent, you've got to declare everything. In the one, in terms of related parties, there is an extra clause in that standard which talks about materiality. So really that related party transaction one is talking about when a tender comes before council or something like that. More so in that, you may know someone who works for a company that's putting on tender, but the material difference, knowing that it's not, it's a different standard to human interest, as I keep cautioning councillors, is always the public perception. So it's always safer to declare something than not to. But as I said, in terms of the accounting standard, there's many companies or people that might come before council's business that we have, that you or senior management have no material interest in terms of what you're doing and what they're doing. So as I said, that's the point I would make, is that on the pecuniary interest one, declare everything. On the related party transactions, unless something comes before council, there's probably not a lot you need to say on it. It has a different sort of standard on it. But by general provision, always declare. It's always better to be upfront rather than. But you can make these declarations at any time. You can update them at any time. So we do have an obligation. And one of the other things I did mention there is the public interest disclosure policy, which is another way of reporting malpractice. And there's been quite things in that policy where you can report if you think, not just you as councillors, but anyone can report. And one of the things that I have to do as government's officer on behalf of council is report back to the government on whether we receive any public interest disclosures. And generally speaking, all since my time here, and I'm probably think since this council was conceived, there hasn't been a public interest disclosure. However, we, the general manager, puts it through with our pays every now and then, just a reminder that people are aware of it, that you do have an opportunity as well as a responsibility if you see something that you don't like, you can make a disclosure to be protected, and it can be looked at without identifying who or what you're up to as well, but it's just an opportunity for anyone to report any public money is going astray or not being spent properly, or if you think there's something wrong. So that's open to everybody. I'm just bringing that to probably the new council. I'm sure the other councils know it very well. But it's just an opportunity for you to familiarise yourself with other legislative opportunities.
Thank you. Question?
Through you, Madam Mayor. Greg, on the Secretary Treasurer located, and this is just an example for everyone with a question for themselves. They're going to put in for a grant, there's some dental grants coming out, and it's through a grant for wheelchair access to the floor. But where do I sit in there? I won't be doing the application, I won't even do it. But I'm sort of a councillor and the council's giving me grants, so we will look in.
Just look, first up, all I can do is give you advice. I can't tell you what to do. I can't tell you what to put in your declarations. I can't tell you when you make a declaration. However, in terms of distinguishing you between being a member of an association and being on their executive, the rule of thumb is if you are in a body where you have an influence on the decision-making process of that group, so which is, like whether you're on the board or whether you're on the executive, that's where that line changes. So if say you went with secretary treasurer, and that application came before the council. The way you would declare that would be different to when you were actually on, and whether you decide to stay in the room. These are decisions you make. We don't push buttons and force you to do things. But yeah, that distinction between being in a position of influencing an outcome or decision, that's the line in terms of just general clubs and membership of other organisations. So as I said, my rule of thumb is always declare and always absent yourself. If you're in doubt, absent yourself from the meeting for that particular item or whatever. So you know, when it comes to the grants, there'll be many community groups that will be putting in grants. So if the grant process has, you know, if your group is one of the successful grant people, you know, obviously you wouldn't be able to necessarily vote. Well, you could, but it might look, the public perception of that might be looking like you've got an interest in it. So you would just have to rely on the other councillors. But we would have to, as a council officer, make sure that report is broken up, because if all of you belong to a group and they've all got grants, effectively if it's done in toto as a one grant decision, then you'd all be able to read. So, you know, it's good for us as administrators to know in advance if you do have those conflicts, because then we can do that. As I said, I don't want to set up here a report where everyone's out of the room and there's no quorum that's make a decision. So, yeah, that's what we end up there.
So in that situation, I would, if it's going to the table, I'd declare a conflict of interest and then leave the room.
Yeah, and just for that one resolution.
Greg, Alistair?
Look, it's not a question, it's a comment, Madam Mayor, and it's mainly for new councillors. And it's not directly related to this, it's more around the donations and expenditure reports that are due back to the Electoral Commission. I've had a conversation, only due next week, on the 28th, they need to be in by. That actually requires 4 forms to be completed. One is an elected member and one is a candidate, which I wasn't aware of until I contacted the office. So just for our new folk, just be a little aware that 4 forms, 2 for the 6 months and 2 for the annual report.
Wonderful. Thank you, Councillor Roberts, for the heads up. Do you have any other questions? Do we have a mover for that? Councillor Sampson, did you want to move the? Thank you. Councillor Sampson, seconded by Councillor Peterson. Got your hand up there, Councillor? Thank you very much. All those in favour?
No.
Aye, carried. 11.6 Murray-Darling Association.
Through you, Madam Mayor, the report to has been outlined informally whether to maintain membership of the Murray-Darling Association, and following that, then if councillors so wish to resolve, the 2 councillors will be given the opportunity to attend the Murray-Darling Association's National Conference, AGM, 29th of September to the I'll have to let you know.
Can you hear me, GM?
Yeah.
Yep.
I think it's the 19th, not the 29th.
19th to 21st. I don't think it goes for a month. So look, there's been some discussion informally with the councillors, so it's really up to the council now to continue to remain members, and whether you see value in 2 councillors attending that association conference and in Albury.
All right, so Councillor Ford has something she wants to say.
Whilst we're still in questions, I actually probably want to move the oral amendment to the motion.
Okay,
No questions.
so no, she doesn't have a question.
Don't have questions.
No, okay, all right. Councillor Birch, question?
Through you, Madam Mayor. The actual purpose that it's serving our council, would someone just elaborate on what it achieved or what it what would be the repercussions of pulling out if we did, and what are the benefits of staying in place?
The Murray-Darling Association's been around for a while, and it's broken into essentially an advocacy group broken down into various regions of the Murray-Darling Basin, and we're in Region 2, as you can see in the report. Look, from my experience, I've been here 2 years. It's been a bit of a mixed bag of what sort of results we get from it. There's a number of councils across the Murray-Darling region who are no longer members, but likewise, there's also members, councils who have remained as members. There's been a number of discussions with the new CEO informally with the Ramjo. And you know, there's a bit of a mixed bag as to whether it continues to give the I suppose thrust it needs to take things back to government around water issues and the issues around the Murray-Darling Basin plan. So I think it's up to councils to make their own choice, and if council resolve to not become a member, that doesn't mean we couldn't join again in 12 months' time or 2 years' time. It's just really whether there's any value in the money we're expending, and whether it's seen as being an advocacy group that's providing value to us as an individual council.
Councillor Vaughan, got your hand up. Is that from the last time or something?
Yeah, sorry, that was from the last time, but when there's no further questions, I'm happy to move a motion, but I would like to alter the one from the recommendation.
All right, we'll hold 2 secs. Any other questions then?
Through you, Madam Mayor. So, Mr. John, are we just duplicating what we're doing with Ramjo? Or is it just a talk first?
Good question, Deputy Mayor. Look, there's a mixture of views. My, I suppose, professional opinion from what I've seen in various meetings and so forth has been that it's not necessarily providing that really cut and thrust, bang the table kind of advocacy work that I really think that the Murray-Darling Basin plan needs, which is taking the arguments to the government to make sure that we are being adequately represented around water management. Ramjo has created a water position paper, which has been seen as a very good outcome. And it has very much taken those things to government to, as I say, down the table. Not that we've seen any sort of different results from that, but yeah, look, from my view, particularly over the last 12 months, I think it's been not too strong in terms of its advocacy efforts through to government. That's just my opinion.
Any other questions? The motion is there. Would somebody like to move that or a different motion? Councillor Vaughan.
Madam Mayor, if I may, I'd like to move that we resolve to cancel our membership with the Murray-Darling Association. I'm happy to speak to that when we have a seconder, if we have a seconder.
Right. Councillor Clapham.
Sorry.
Councillor Clapham and Councillor Fogarty are racing to second your motion. So if you'd like to, you can assure it's been seconded. Would you like to speak to your motion?
Oh, yes. I just question the value that we are actually receiving from the association, and reflect on the General Manager's comments with this change of CEO. I really feel the association doesn't have that bang for buck anymore, and I'd like to see Council have a further discussion at some point about how we can support the advocacy within our region, especially with this critical time approaching around the 450 and the Labor government. So I think we could spend our $3,000 a lot better. And there's no reason that in future times we could move to actually rejoin them if their direction does change. But given that they are a whole of basin organisation, there is so many things that are critical to us to advocate for, that we will not get the advocacy support through the Murray-Darling Association because of the one meeting I have attended. I've already been told it's a whole of basin view, and so therefore I don't think they can represent our region the way that we require.
So thank you. Councillor Clayton, you seconded the motion. Add to that.
I absolutely support Councillor Ford's comments with regards to the motion.
Awesome. Does anybody else wish to speak for or against? Councillor
Chairman, I strongly support that motion. Having been involved in council for some time and also attending one of the conferences, which was probably the most, 2 days of the most boring conference I've ever attended in my life. I would strongly support that. I think really the organisation has lost its way and is being taken over and captured by a very narrow point of view from particularly from the South Australian members of the organisation. So I strongly support Councillor Ford's position.
Thank you. I'm sorry that's 2 days of your life you won't never get back. So does anybody wish to speak against Linda's motion to cancel membership? No?
I just would like to say that after being over to South Australia, their advocacy to keep the water in South Australia, I do understand that they've kept all their jobs on the river. They do not have bridges. They use the ferries. They've kept multiple people employed in that situation as opposed to it just being a voyage and that's all. No, I agree with you, Councillor Fawns. I think we need to cancel this because, as you said, Pat, they've lost their way. It's no longer about the Murray. It's only about South Australia. So, yeah, no, I agree with that entirely.
Thank you. So all those in favour? Aye. Carried. Well done. Thanks, Councillor Fawns. Enjoy Sydney. 11.7 is free waste disposal ranking. Everybody out.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So in previous years, as noted in the report, council used to have a hard waste pickup and also gate charging. So since 2015, very much reduced the charges to residential waste at the gate, and ceased doing the hard waste pickup only due to the increase in the costs at the time. At that time, council brought in these 4 free weekends. So the larger items, mattresses, white goods, and that do have a charge for residents at the gate. There's 4 weekends where residents are able to dispose of them free of charge. So it's been practiced to bring these weekends up in front of council, try and space them out throughout the years. We try and keep them away from public holidays. They do pass some weekends, of course, which is around public holidays. So staff are recommending that council continues with the 4 free weekends for 22-23. One of those was noted in the report.
Thanks, Mark. Questions, Councillor Peterson?
Just on that, I know under financial implications that we won't accurately know what's happened until the end of June 2023, but are we able to have within the meetings, I guess, after these 3 weekends, are we able to have a bit of an idea about how many carloads came through and what sort of waste we were seeing out to the tip, just that we are approaching the requirements for a new landfill site?
Yeah, thanks, Councillor Peterson. Yeah, we'll be able to provide that information if the briefing sessions just certainly after those meetings. So staff do continue to log all the waste that comes in. Yeah, just goes to different council and what's happening on that.
Just that if we've got a bunch of demolition waste going in,
Yeah.
processes for what's going to be They'll come in on our agenda, that's all.
We will assure our public that the 1st of April particularly is not a joke. Any other questions? Right, got a mover for that, Councillor Platten, thank you very much. Second, Councillor Sampson, thank you very much. All those in favour? Carried. Okay, 11.8. Are you right, Mari? Go home and get it.
So Development Services report for June 2022 is presented. The report details development, public health and animal control activities for the month of June. The recommendation is that council receive and note the June Development Services update.
We have a mover and second, and no questions for Margaret today, she's not up to it. No, seriously, do we have some questions for Margaret? No? No, Harold's happy to move the report. Do we have a seconder? Thanks, Councillor Crosby. All those in favour? Carried. Thanks.
I have a question for you outside of it, Mary. Don't question those highly paid person on council.
On that, it's not a question for Maui, but just with the parking controls and fines, there's a couple of no stopping, no parking areas in town. I'm noticing people are stopping and parking there for extended periods. I think one standing the Island Sanctuary, just off Main Street. So whether or not we want to keep an eye on the controls, we might drop a racing area down.
Right. Operations report. Thanks, Mark.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The monthly report regarding operations and maintenance activities through June. As noted in the report, gravel road maintenance continues to be a sort of priority for council, especially with the current weather conditions. Council currently has our own grader fleet doing capital works as well as road maintenance, as well as 2 contract graders. So in response to the additional work required, we've been able to source some additional resources. Council's also now commencing weed spraying, where that in previous years, maybe last year, that management of varietype weeds was a challenge for council. So that's commencing very shortly. We'll have that under control. Across the operations section, resourcing just with staff being unwell, as go through sort of the whole community, does continue to be a challenge, but yes, the supervisors are on top of it at the moment. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions? Councillor Burge.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Page 102, the water and sewer. I noticed that the changes and maintenance for the month of June were 14, water meter 8, and water main burst or leak 8. Just wondering into the future, this seems to be, we went back through a few of the older issues that I guess are we moving towards a sewer replacement at some stage in different areas? Or are we doing that? Just that behind my house, it's collapsed three times. I will add a disclosure of interest. I'm just curious as to upgrade in the future.
Yep, thank you, Councillor Burge. So yeah, it is. Council does have a program. So each year, under its capital works, we do what's called relining. So we don't, we try not to dig up the lines, but as you know, it's sort of a place where we have those issues. But generally, we'll come in and reline the existing earthenware sewer with plastic. It provides structural capacity and performs as well as what a new plastic pipe would be. In terms of that program, we do try and look at areas, so especially the deeper areas and the older areas of doing them, but we'll also keep in mind places that have had a history of chokes and paving and do that work with the relining. So that's a program that's been around for 10+ years. That's quite a good program, got very good results for that. So from memory in your area, council, we have relined, given that we've had those issues in the areas that was relined as part of the as part of the last program. I'll raise that with staff. So that's sort of the relining is the way we are renewing and improving the system and sort of program through each year.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Would somebody like to move the report? Oh, thanks, councillor Fogarty. Do we have a second one for that? Thanks, councillor Sampson. You're on the run this morning. Thank you. Any other questions, concerns? All those in favour? Major projects report.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The monthly report on the major projects being towards the end of the 21-22 financial year, highlighting some of the main projects included in the report. Work on the Marine Gardens and Amenities and Rotunda is continuing with the work on the roof of the Rotunda. The North Denny area, it's been completed. It's come up very well. We're very happy with the final product is there. As well as with the North Denilican Rest area, as noted in the report there, landscaping is still to be done on that area. The Civic Precinct project is going on track with the program given to council for a late September, 29th of September completion. Noting that there's been discussion around the colours for that. We are getting the new information, or not new information, but information from the architect around the colours and that, so they can be presented to the council. On colours, we still have time. Very much appreciated that project has been able to continue over the last few weeks. There is still take time for some consultation and some input into what the colours will be. In terms of it's really a completion of a lot of these projects, as we normally do. For the council's next meeting, we'll be providing a report on the capital works, both this grant funding and also council's own program, the normal 3 months report. This report moving forward will have the 21-22 projects, but also all those 22-23 projects as well. So those are the program. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions, councillor Fogarty?
I do have a question, Madam Mayor, to the director. In terms of the colour change, Mark, given that the clock tower was painted while all of the scaffolding was there, if we change the colours, what options do we have in terms of the clock tower?
Thank you, Mr. Fogarty. That's something we'll discuss with the contractor, because a lot of there in terms of the availability of the equipment needed to do that. It's actually in terms of methodology and the elevated work platform needed to undertake that. So not a simple thing to do. So definitely something we will raise with the contractor.
Thank you. Questions, councillor Peterson?
Two. One is with the civic precinct flooring, now I know the floorboards have been organised, we're looking at a decent breakdown with the report I saw. The previous flooring was grooved, so it was a dance floor, but it was grooved. I think that's because they were so worn. The new one will be a smooth, like a dance floor floorings. Something. And then, out of curiosity, this report was raised at the budget meetings happening. Now they discussed that their roads weren't being seen to. Now I know there's nothing in the major projects here for July, but if they, is that some of the roads that they were talking about, I don't know if they've actually put in a formal concern report, if that's been the next one.
Yeah,
thank you, Councillor Pearson. So yeah, we have been undertaking maintenance work. A lot of the concerns raised by the community in terms of some resheeting work, some of them coming in at a lot of gravel, so it's considered a capital project rather than maintenance. That was done a few years ago. I have since that time gone out and had an inspection of it, and you can definitely see their concerns and that. So at the moment we're looking at how we can get a solution there, because there's some challenges there just with pits we've used, and we've been whether we can still get decent material out of that. But that's across the board. The manager operations is looking through that. Look at sort of doing that resheeting within the resheeting program, or whether we want to look at sort of other projects, reallocating other projects. So at the moment we're just trying to scope and work out what the best solution is there for it. We're definitely doing the maintenance, so it's going to put more material on there, maintenance, and then we'll look at how the sort of resheeting capital works we can do in that area.
Thank you, councillor.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Mr. Dalzell. I had a call today from Mayor Barrett, and I'm not sure if this is in the right place in the reading, but he was questioning about having a toilet at the unit on the pole. His daughter was walking through there, and the gentleman was himself, and it was Tuesday, Monday, Tuesday, there's no crossings, and it was a fair question. Where, if you need to use a toilet and you're at the end of the pole, where can you go to the toilet? I suppose you have no dogs.
Yeah, thank you, Deputy Mayor. So council has that other toilet behind the crossing. So to me, that seems like it's a more of a signage direction, because you can go from the pole, walk on the beach, under the bridge, we put all that work in with the ramps and that there. So access across to it, but whether that information is for our visitors, that information is there. So that we can definitely take that on board and provide that, so that people stopping there can definitely go to the existing toilets. In terms of constructing a toilet in there, well, that would be part of a capital works program. It's not in the 22-23 one, so something to look at. There's always there's got to be this balance between where there's a need or perceived needs where toilets are, to where we actually put them, and the cost of constructing them. So that's something we can.
Yeah, so I wasn't aware that there was toilets, so it just designed.
Yeah, no, that's what it seems.
Yeah, just sort of a broader context here. This is the major project report. It's not all of the capital works that council does. We also have a capital program that is, if you like, business as usual for council, and that consists of a number of things. There is maintenance, which is generally out of operating funds that we do on roads and so forth. And then we have what we call renewal projects, and the Director of Infrastructure mentioned resheeting, and that's if you like, bringing the asset up to back to its original, as close to its original condition as possible. There is a process whereby councillors, if they have these ideas around new projects they wish to push forward, could call for a report or move a notice of motion that says, provide a report on the notifiers of bringing, putting a new toilet here and there, and then council officers will then go away and research that, give all the information that the council needs to make a decision as to whether they'll construct something new. And that's available to councillors at any point in time.
Back to the civic precinct refurbishment. When are the secondary office block? Anytime.
It's because due to the works around the plaza and so forth, it's not scheduled to be occupied until the actual project is due for occupancy with the town hall. We will look for opportunities if it gets finished earlier, maybe a few weeks early, that we can come and move in there. That's very much down to work on and sign off from the building surveyor to give us a certificate of occupancy.
Councillor Begg.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just two things to point out. One, if we're going to, with the cocktail, perhaps the river or whatever he was, could wear a hard hat, but he has a massive piece of equipment coming down on his head. Or we could paint one on before we post that on our communications site. The gentlemen or the riggers, whatever they were, in the tower did not have hard hats on. If there'd been an incident, that just requires a little bit more observation. My other question is on page 113 and page 115. I'm looking at what I assume to be the same toilet amenities block. Under local roads and community infrastructure, there's a Memorial Park amenities upgrade for 153,113. Then when I go down to 115, under the showground stimulus funding, there's the demolition and construction of the new toilet block for 168. Are they not the same item?
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Birch. They are absolutely the same item, and this is something we've very much considered internally on how we present this information. So the attachment to this report, because this report is very much around grant-funded major projects, you'll see that the heading for each of those groups is the grant funding. So since our project has got two areas of funding, it's shown twice, so it's shown in each of the grant bits, being the local road community infrastructure on page 113 and the showground stimulus on page 115. So as staff, we've talked about, well, do we put it as on a project base, and the project shows that. We do need to do a lot in terms of management and quitting of grant funding of keeping in their own use. So that's why probably the main driver is why the report information is doing the way it is. We're always happy to have a look at that, whether it makes a bit more sense being just the projects, because really the grant funding may not be as important as opposed to just seeing the projects. So that
So from that, we can assume that that amenities block, the total cost or the total funding is about 300.
yeah,
That's fine.
Yeah.
I thought that. Thank you.
So is the town hall.
Yeah, same thing. It's a bit of a paper chase to look at it. Yeah, anyway, no, thank you.
Any other questions? Do we have a mover for that report? Thank you, Councillor Peterson. If someone would like to second that report. Thanks, Councillor. Any other questions, concerns, or otherwise? All those in favour? Aye, carried. 12, no notice of motion. 13, no questions with notice. 14, no confidential matters. That being all said and done for.
Can I just ask the question?
We'll close the meeting and we go to general business and questions. Yeah, all right, well, we'll close the meeting and then we'll go into, shut down the live stream and go into general business. consider 10:25 a.m. 19th of July, council meeting closed. Thank you.